Hey everybody, Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. And it's Thursday today. It's a little rainy outside. Such New York weather for February. Today I'm talking with someone I do not know who is part of a 10,000 person project. His name is Rob Lawless. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's nice to meet you. I'm happy to be on the show with you. So I am on a mission to spend an hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people, and really just to see what comes from opening doors for no particular reason, to connect with people authentically without any type of agenda, and to kind of have intentional connection be a part of my life. So I started this project in November of 2015. It's been over 7 years since I started, and I'm based in Philadelphia. I grew up in the Philly area, went to Penn State University, studied finance there, graduated in 2013, and then I worked for Deloitte Consulting. And that was kind of a hard transition for me because I was really involved at Penn State. So I went from this very strong sense of community to the lack of that, just sitting in a cubicle for 12 hours a day.
Hmm.
So, and I minored in entrepreneurship at school. So I've always been interested in creating my own path, and I missed the organic connection with people once school stopped. I didn't want to stop meeting new people just because that phase of my life stopped. So the project became my excuse to sit down with people that I didn't already know. So yeah, I started 7 years ago. 8 months after I started it, I'd left Deloitte and went to a tech startup. And that's where I was when I started this project. And 8 months after I started this, that company was bought out. I was laid off, and I jumped into this full time. And I've been doing this full time ever since. So I have to date, and we can get into the specifics of everything, but to date, I've met, well, let me see. You are the 5,468th person that I've met.
5,468?
Yes.
That's a nice number.
Yeah, it's one of them. So yeah, and I used to meet everyone in person. I met 3,259 people all in person before COVID happened. And then when it did, I started doing virtual calls, which was a blessing and a curse. Like, it opened up who I was able to talk to. Obviously, I wasn't sitting with people in person anymore, but now I've met people from 90 different countries around the world. So it's been a big eye opener.
Mhm. That's one of the things that I've said about COVID. It obviously, it's a pandemic, so it's an evil thing, but it changed things in so many ways that it accelerated some things, and something's good, something's bad, obviously, as we look at the events that are happening. But I began networking feverishly, literally during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, because I realized I can't meet people, I can't go
Mm-hmm.
out, and I meeting people is so important because first of all, you stop thinking about yourself, and
Yeah.
it's like a muscle, a million muscles that you don't use when you meet people. And if you're trying to become, or if you're in the state of becoming, meeting people just adds to that. Because every time you think you're something, you talk with someone who's something else, and you're like, I never imagined that,
Yeah.
especially internationally. Because you get your international news through a filter. And when you talk with somebody who's there and they just freely share with you, you're thinking, okay, so there's, at least five sides to this coin, and I'm only aware of one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's made me aware of, I think if you look at the States, like New York and LA are very much cities that other cities in the States pay attention to. But like New York and LA are not really paying attention to Des Moines or whatever is going on elsewhere. And it's very similar on an international scale. As I've talked with people from other countries, like, everyone knows about the politics in the US and the pop culture in the US and stuff. But very rarely do we know what's going on in some of the smaller countries. And I think that's been an eye opener to really start to educate myself on what's going on in other people's countries, and just understanding, like, they do look at us a lot and understand a lot of our culture spilled out into these other places. So Yeah, I feel like I've become much more of a global citizen through my project, especially in that COVID time. There's also a strong sense of belonging too, because probably one of the only times, hopefully like the first and last, well, in a negative way, like time that we'll be able to all relate to each other so like strongly, because I would talk to people from other countries and it's like, oh, how's everything there with COVID? What are the lockdown restrictions like where you are? What's the timeline on the vaccine and all this different stuff? So no matter who I talked to, we all had that shared experience. And I think for me going through that time of isolation, I was meeting kind of like you. I was meeting a lot of new people. I was meeting 4 people a day. So I don't see that quarantine time as like a time of isolation. It was a time of growth for me.
Mm-hmm. I have, I'm sure other people have thought of it, but we have reinvented the term BC. Now it's not before, BCE, before the Christian era. It's now before the COVID era.
Yeah.
And we're still living the COVID era, but it's, before COVID, I was working remote before COVID.
Okay.
So when we shifted into remote, it was no skin off my back. I was networking before COVID, but it included meeting people, actually going someplace and meeting people. And in many instances, it was sort of obligatory to go to a conference. And conferences are great and they're very good for industry and you get to meet a lot of people, but it's somewhat niche-y, clicky, and all those kinds of things. And if it's the only way for you to do it, you're not doing one-on-one. You're really restricted to groups and, going to the cocktail party and perhaps meeting people in the worst state. You're eating at a restaurant. You're not paying attention to the person 100%. So, I don't know, doing a one-on-one, the term now is like Kleenex, Zoom. You do a one-on-one Zoom with someone. It's wildly different. It is wildly different. And I get a lot more out of it. And how did you even brainchild this? Like you just thought to yourself, I'm going to meet a few people and then it turned into this?
It was always 10,000 from the start because it was working in like my dream job because I studied finance. So for me, it was either consulting or investment banking was what I thought I would go into. And Deloitte was one of the top companies in consulting. So once I got that position, yeah, that was supposed to be my dream job. And I was making great money and I was in a path where they were going to pay for me to get my MBA full time from one of the top schools in the country. I was dating this girl that I had met 3 weeks before school let out. So I was checking all of the right boxes and I wasn't happy. So something was off, right? And I think just from a career standpoint, I just didn't accept the idea that I would have to work for someone else until retirement and do that. Because I grew up in a time where Facebook was created and Snapchat was created. And I'm seeing people who look like me, who are my age, run their own companies and they're becoming millionaires by the time they're like in their 20s. So I think I had a little bit of naivety and self-confidence to believe that I could be one of those people as well. But I wasn't into coding or tech or anything like that. And I would listen to those people and they would always say, you have to learn to code to build a tech company. But that wasn't my passion. My passion was people. And I was at Penn State. I was a tour guide for prospective students. I raised money for the fight against pediatric cancer. I built houses with Habitat for Humanity. I was in a fraternity. I was part of our homecoming efforts. So that's how I kind of built this really nice organic network at school. And that was the most fulfilling part of school for me, more than my degree or anything like that. So yeah, I just wanted to do my own thing. And meeting 10,000 people felt like a weird goal that people would pay attention to. Because a lot of people still, 10,000 sounds so much more impressive than 1,000 or 100. I always tell people if I did 100, it would have been a New Year's resolution. If I did 1,000, it would have been like a nice little side project. But in order for me to actually complete the goal of 10,000, it required me investing myself full time into the project like it was my career.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would never get done. I'm 7 years into it and I'm only halfway there. So
You've got another 7 years to go.
yeah, so kind of by design, I wanted to create something that would require me to treat it as a career and would take me away from this other path. So that's what I did. And I was fortunate that I had friends and family who were willing to host me over the years, because in the early days of a project like this, you're not really making money. I did have partnerships along the way. The biggest one was with WeWork, the co-working space. They paid me for 9 months to meet people one day out of every week at their locations. And this was the 9 months leading up to COVID. My last partnership day with WeWork was March 11th of 2020. And that was the last day of in-person meetings that I had before everything shut down. But over the last couple of years, I've shifted into speaking. So now I'll speak at companies and I speak at conferences and universities and whatnot, sharing the value of intentional connection and giving people a framework that they can use to connect with each other. So that's been a really nice place to go, because it feels very authentic, and I feel good about the work that I'm doing as a speaker and the impact it's having on people. And as I looked at like Deloitte climbing up to partner, it was something that I knew was really cool to get to, but I didn't really see myself doing that climb. And now as I look at successful speakers, I do see myself being interested and excited by that climb.
Have you met people and talked with people that have so impacted your life that, I mean, there isn't a day or so that you don't think or speak with them or somehow are still connected with them?
Yeah. I think most of my life is impacted by the people I've met through my project, and then just the people I meet in general through my life. And I think that holds true for all of us. I just don't think a lot of people pay attention to it. So, for example, very real world examples, the apartment that I'm calling in from right now, the place I live, I moved here in October. I was on a 9-month sublet before this. And as that sublet came to a close, I'd actually wanted to stay in my old place. Even though the guy was moving out, I wanted to take over his lease, but the building management wanted to raise the rent a lot. So I was looking elsewhere, and I put out a story on Instagram asking if anyone knew of realtors that I could talk to or whatever. And one guy replied to my story, and I had met him like a month or two prior. And he said, there's a unit opening up in my girlfriend's place, so you should reach out to this woman, tell her you're a referral. So I did that, and then I ended up in this place. And then he moved in with his girlfriend a week after I moved here. So he's my next door neighbor now. His name is Dave. Today is his birthday. So I see him every week. And he was just someone that was part of my project, but now he's my neighbor, and he's the reason that I'm occupying this space that I'm in. And the gym that I go to Planet Fitness because I met a girl whose dad was an owner of one of the franchises. And he gave me a membership to it, and I've just held on to it ever since. And even the guy who works the front desk at that Planet Fitness was part of my project. So I see him every day. The reason that I do public speaking is because of a girl I met in August of 2019 for my project who was doing really well in the field. And she was like, there's space here for you too. So that is influenced by her. And then I talk about a girl, my friend Fernanda, in my speeches, but I met her in October 2018, and she had just lost her brother the year before. He was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And when she was growing up in Brazil, her dad was hit and killed by a drunk driver. So I think a lot about her story as I think about the time I have with my own family, because I'm the youngest of three. I still have my older brother. He lives in New York, my older sister, and then my parents, they're all back in the suburbs where I grew up. And I've had to move back in with my parents multiple times throughout my journey, but I would tell each of them I loved them before I would go to bed, and I would give them a hug. And I always say, like, that act is a direct result of the time I spent with Fernanda, because I appreciate my loved ones while I still have them now. So if I didn't have that perspective from her sharing her story with me, I might just be someone who assumes, I'll always have my family around. But because I know that they can be taken from you at any moment, I want them to know that I love them. So yeah, like on a very real basis, she changed the way I spend time with my family.
Yeah, listening to other people's stories, when you're taking an intentional moment to learn about them. And everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're getting, I mean, it's an hour, but when you get down to the core of somebody in that hour, it sticks with you. I talk with a lot of people, and the intention is, well, let's talk about business, and it never goes there. We start talking about commonalities that happen holistically as we get into a bit of conversation. And we, inevitably, we're talking about dogs, for example.
Okay.
And it will go on for an hour, whereby at the end of the hour, we're both like, we were supposed to be talking about business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get together again. And it's literally, you build things based on commonalities, but sometimes those commonalities are begin with their conversation. So yeah, you both have family. So everybody assumes that at some point you either had family or you lost family. Mm-hmm. So the commonality there is feelings, which we all have. And when you start talking with someone, you find those common feelings. And the world becomes a nicer place. It's not like you wake up on a Monday and go, oh my God, the world is ending, horrible things are happening. You're thinking on such a different level. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I get to meet some people today. I wonder what will happen to me, or for me, I can't wait to talk to Christy, find out, how our dog is doing.
Yeah.
It's not that you ditch your friends and look for new friends every day. It's not that, because networking is different than that. You're not necessarily saying to yourself, I'm networking so that I can make $1 million, because obviously when you were at Deloitte, that wasn't satisfying. You're not saying to yourself, I'm meeting friends so that they can know about me, because that becomes very stale very quickly. Mm-hmm. When you realize that I'm going to be meeting people because I need to meet people, and they're people, and you get through a few of those sessions, for anybody who does any type of networking, it's exponential. It continually opens your eyes. I mean, your eyes are wide open. Yeah, wide open. It's almost scary how open they are. When you're walking down the street now and you're looking at people, you're looking at them so totally different, and you're more able to literally have a conversation with anyone at any time because you're open to it. While most of us, I'm one of those crazy people in the shopping market that if we're in the same aisle looking at the same food, we have something in common, and I'm having a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. The person will be looking over and going, oh gosh, yeah, crazy woman. And I laugh at that. If they're afraid of me, that's okay. I get it. But I'm not afraid of them being afraid of me.
Yeah. Have you been that way your whole life, or was there a point in your life where meeting people became more important to you?
I am an odd duck. I consider myself an introvert, but it's an odd type of introversion. So I think I've been that way my entire life. My mother used to tell me all the time when I was young, because I would always give parties for all of my friends. Oh, it's so-and-so's birthday party. Let's have a party. And my mother would say, they don't do that for you. And I'd be like, I don't care, Mom. Just get the potato chips. Mm-hmm. But why was I doing it? At first, I think when I was younger, I was doing it to be social, to be accepted. I think I had something selfish in mind. I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't realize that it was pretty simple, So I did it with these, these types of ways to bring people together. And as I got older and I recognized, okay, so, there's something selfish involved in that. And now I know why. Maybe it's time to come out of that shell a little bit. And the podcast was my effort to, like you, 10,000 people, except I don't have a number. The podcast for me was my effort to meet people and to learn how to listen and to have conversations with people one-on-one, because I'm not great in a crowd. At a social event when there's lots of people, And as they're getting drunk and I'm completely sober, because I am, I realize, okay, this is not for me. And I become that introverted wallflower. Until I meet that one person that's also sober and we can have a conversation. I can't, having drunken conversations, not really a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
But not, neither here nor there. I think that me meeting people and talking with people is my way of coming out of that, is my purposeful way, my goal to come out of the shell.
Mm.
And I sometimes find it difficult. When you are having a conversation with somebody that, for me, maybe a client, that I know is going to be somewhat of a conflict. I'm still learning how to do those. And normally, when you're having a friendly conversation, that just doesn't happen. But sometimes you do fall into a little bit of a dark place when you're talking to somebody. And it's more than difficult to get out of that place. When you've said something, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And I think that it's a real skill to be diplomatic without being full of it.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I didn't say I am a New Yorker. I do have a big personality. I do put my foot in my mouth often. And one of the reasons why I shy away from conversations is because I don't know what to do when I put my foot in my mouth. Mm. And normally, depending on what you've said, the other day a matter of fact, it was on a podcast. The other day we were talking and I said, oops. I'll say oops and oops Oriental. And I'm like, I just threw myself back 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm an Asian, but I put my foot in my mouth and I literally went to bed going, I can't believe I said that. Oh my God, people are going to hate me. And I'm like, you know what? It's okay. Hate me. I made a mistake. From my generation, words change. I remember my parents saying things that I would be like, Ma, you can't say that anymore. You have to say this. And now it's the same thing. So words are always changing. It's difficult sometimes to have conversations with people because of that. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, tell me, what happens when you are having a conversation with somebody who's so different than you? I mean, literally, they say men are from more, men are Mars, women are from Venus, but it's even more than that. Do you choose to have conversations with people perhaps that are wildly different than you?
Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about people before I meet them, so I can't choose who is and is not going to be different than me.
How do you choose somebody?
Whoever reaches out, whoever wants to be part of the project. So people will message me through Instagram because they'll, like you saw my project through Daniel, right?
That's right.
So very similarly, like it's a lot of word of mouth. Sometimes I've done Kelly Clarkson's talk show, The Today Show. So people will find me through things like that. If I do podcasts and whatnot. So a lot of people will just message me on Instagram and say, hey, I heard about your project. I want to be part of it. And if their profile is private or even in general, I really don't look at it because to me, it doesn't matter. It's just another.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, I'm open to meeting everyone. So it doesn't matter what their profile does or does not look like to me. So yeah, I do meet people who are different than me. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about with listening. I've become a great listener. Well, I don't know, maybe. I think I've gotten better.
I'm becoming a better listener.
Yeah. I'm getting better at listening. And I think for me, there's a lot of acknowledgement rather than judgment. And you can probably see that as well through your podcast, where I'm not there to judge people. I'm there to acknowledge what their life experiences were, because I think we are all just the accumulation of the experiences we've been through in our lives. Right. So I almost see it as like a flow chart, like if this, then that type thing. Because like if you grew up in Philadelphia, chances are you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Okay, cool. If you grew up in Dallas, you're probably a Dallas Cowboys fan. And it's the same thing. It's like you are a fan of a team because of a location you spent your childhood in. So I don't hate Dallas people. I still like the fun of saying like their team is terrible, will always be better than them. But you can take that and extrapolate that to religion too. Like if you grew up in this country or this area, you are Catholic, you are Muslim, etc., because that's the environment you grew up in. It's the same exact experience, just colored differently based on where you grew up. So yeah, it's a lot of acknowledgement, and I think of their experiences. And then with personalities that I don't necessarily get along with, I see it as like, if this person exists, there is definitely someone else out in the world exactly like this person. So if I can learn how to interact with this type of personality, I can learn how to interact with it the next time I come across it.
Right.
So that's like a skill I feel myself building.
And that, that's something that in business I've learned, because it's the client, because I'm freelance. It's the client that you want to fire every single time. Over time, you're like, okay, this is not going to work. And you just like, okay, client, this is not working. And they're like, you better believe it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah.
over time, it's, when you recognize what works and what doesn't work, that doesn't mean you avoid what doesn't work. It means that you begin to appreciate what doesn't work. And at some points in time in your mind, you can say to yourself, this is that situation, this is that person, this is that environment that doesn't work. I now know why it doesn't work. Do I want to change myself? Do I want it to work? Or, is it just not palatable?
Right.
And you grow, because sometimes it's a boundary thing, and you're like, no, it's really not my boundary thing. And then sometimes it becomes the challenge that you want to take.
Mm-hmm.
So that person that each and every time you meet, you realize, something, this time I'm going to climb that mountain. I made a mistake with this type of person, whatever it is. They have that big personality. They may aspire, perhaps it's an envious type of thing that's going on with you, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to work through envy. Every time I meet this person that's literally done everything I want to do, and my body says, boundary, because I'm feeling envy, I'm uncomfortable here. You say to yourself, I'm going to climb that mountain, and I'm going to talk with them, and I'm going to make them a friend, and I'm going to work on envy.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of these interactions with people that you think you don't like people, it's because you're afraid of them. You don't understand them for whatever reason. You grew up in a situation where they were never in your environment, and it's a totally new situation. Perhaps you're afraid of peer pressure, whereby, your friends will be like, why are you talking to that type of a person? So many reasons why we don't interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to quit that. We need to cut that out. I catch myself all the time. I was in a situation a number of years ago where the business I was working for began to work more internationally, globally. And I was competing with other people with the same talent who would work for less money. And it became apparent, this is not good. This is my adversary. And it was an adversary for a while. And I had to work that out of my head and say, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not adversaries. Competition is what it is. And the truth of the matter is, I am who I am. No one can be that.
Mm-hmm.
They can offer the same services, have the same knowledge set, but they're not me.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone wants to work with me, but not everybody wants to work with you or you. So it works out in the end. And if you could say to yourself, you're a healthy competition, I can learn off of you, you can learn off of me, but we're still unique. People aren't going to put us together and say, oh, they're exactly the same. They're not. Our specialties would be different. And again, somebody would want to work with that big New York personality as opposed to perhaps working with someone from the Ukraine or somebody from India or somebody, there's a lot of work out there.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah,
work.
I agree. What, are you from New York originally then?
I am a New Yorker. I lived in Washington State for 5 years.
Okay.
I came back to New York with my husband.
Okay.
So
How old were you when you did 5 years?
um, it was around my early 40s.
Oh, okay.
So I was in Washington. My husband and I, we were in there for 5 years, and I think we lived in 4 different places.
Okay.
So one of our dogs, lady who was a Rottweiler, and she was very smart. Every time she saw the boxes coming out, literally, I could see the expression on her face going, "Are we moving again?"
Hmm.
No, we had no children. So, the dog was our child. So we
Sure.
moved 4 times. And while we loved it out there, my husband is an avid fisherman. And while we loved it out there, he would get up every single morning and say, "It's raining out." And I would be like, "Yeah, it's Washington State." It's raining out. And then, the summer would come and it would be drop dead gorgeous. And then, winter, there's really 2 seasons. There's the sunny season and then there's the gray season. So the gray season is most of the time.
Mm.
It's not raining every day in Washington State. It's just gray. And there's the sunny season is anywhere between, June through August. And then it's gray. And he would say, "It's raining." And I'd be like, "Okay." Then one day he woke up and he said, "That's it. We're going back to New York." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yes, I can't take this anymore." So he loved the fishing. One day we were out fishing on the boat in the Puget Sound. And a huge whale surfaces. And we're like, "Wow, how cool is that? Isn't that cool?" And we both look at each other at the same time, realizing the whale is about 3 times the size of the boat.
Okay.
And if that whale really wanted to, it could have surfaced right underneath us. And we both looked at each other and went, "Wow." So, there's a certain majesty about life in my mind that I attempt to remind myself every day. And, meeting people, everybody is majestic. Everybody, everybody's got something to say, even if it's a negative thing. You can, if you can instill something positive back to them, isn't that a wonderful thing? But everybody's got something for you to learn. It's priceless. People are priceless. And do you feel that younger people don't network as much as the other generations? Is this what you're doing is something like other people look at you and go, "What are you doing?" Like friends. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think there's a bell curve that exists throughout every generation where there are the people who are going to go out and network a bunch. There are the people who will, the majority will do whatever. And then there will be those people who don't necessarily go out and expose themselves to new people. And I think I saw that too, because I think there is the narrative of, oh, technology, younger kids don't know how to talk to each other because they're always in the screen and this and that. But I've talked to a lot of people who are in high school and college through my project who are perfectly capable of having great conversations. And I've talked to people who are in their 50s and 60s who struggle with conversation. So I think it's probably like a bell curve. It is different. I think the younger people do most of their communication through the apps and stuff. But I don't know. I think there's same with kind of social media. I do think that there's the whole comparison culture and whatnot that exists is a very negative thing. But at the same time, I think about how much I've learned from talking to people from different countries over the last couple years. And then I think about the teens that are growing up with like TikTok now and whatnot, where someone could have a viral video in India that they have at their fingertips in a matter of minutes, or they're learning other like dance styles of other cultures and whatnot. And I think they are being exposed to each other more often. So yeah, I think there's like pros and cons to
Yeah,
it.
definitely. I understand what you're saying. There's pros and cons. Now, obviously the issue is that the younger kids don't have the ability to differentiate between the pros and the cons. So they may be
Sure.
watching
Yeah.
that really great video and that really evil video, and they may think they're both cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly, I would argue that happens for adults too. I think that a
Definitely.
lot of people in like their 30s and 40s will talk about how kids are struggling with anxiety or they're insecure or they have the comparison culture. But then you go look at new parents who are looking at the way that this person raises their kid, or this person's kid has these accomplishments in school. And it's like, it never ends. It just evolves of what it is. At least that's my perspective on it. But yeah, no, I think that it'll be very interesting. I think when the next generation is older, because they've been forced to brand themselves since they're like 10 years old.
Right? It's like they
Hmm.
have a living resume forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got a Facebook account when I was a freshman in high school. So we were a little bit, and I remember teachers being like, be careful what you put on Facebook because job employers will look at this someday. And of course, now they look at it and whatnot. But yeah, even for us, it wasn't until I had just graduated college that the idea of like a following became a thing. So for us, we were just putting pictures out, detailing what our nights were on the weekends and stuff. We weren't trying to curate an audience or build a following. And I think as that became a bigger thing for society, it's like younger kids were like, oh, well, I have to have this aesthetic on my profile, or I have to talk about this or whatever. So yeah, I think they're going to be masters at branding when they're in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah,
But
it's a wild kind of thing. It really is. I social, yeah, social to me is literally I call it like, okay, we're all back in high school again.
mhm,
Because in high school we're all trying to figure out who we are. We're all trying to get friends, and we're all trying to
mhm,
stick out in the crowd, or we're all like becoming the non-popular people, and we eat the sandwich, and we get people making fun of us, and we're all back in high school. So on Facebook, it's like, oh, I need to get the likes. I need to tell everybody where I was. I need to show pictures. I need to take these pictures so that I can show these pictures. I need to upload them. Oh, let's do a video. I mean, it's like this whole thing. Back in, Nobody's living a life anymore. Everybody's
mhm.
branding their lives. It's like they wake up in the morning and they literally think, okay, when I go out today for lunch, don't forget that I've got to, take a picture of the thing because everybody's got to know what I ate.
Mhm.
And sometimes, I have to admit, sometimes when I'm watching my friends, either it's Facebook or it's Twitter or it's LinkedIn, and I watch and I think to myself, are they like directing their lives for this?
Mhm.
And then I get caught up in it. And I'm thinking, this is wild. This is very wild. We all have our own TV shows.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw someone who said it's like people's social media personalities. It's like it is a produced reality show, and people understand that. Like the people who follow know that it's curated,
Right.
but still somehow in their mind they accept it as reality. So it's this really, really weird dynamic. But that's one of the things that I like, and probably you see through your podcast. I always tell people I'm rooted in reality because 3-4 hours a day, I'm having intentional face to face conversations with people. And I only follow the people that I meet through my project. So if ever I see them taking this vacation or doing that or whatever, I know that they like struggled with that certain thing in their life or that they're working towards this goal. So I see their highlight reels through the context of having taken the time to get to know them first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's a And the word intention is like, it should become your middle name, because
Hmm.
everything you're dedicating what 14 years to intention,
Hmm.
um, which is what we all do. In any case, it may be the intention may be, you know what, I'm going to get a job at Deloitte. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to get married. That's what my intention is, and that's what you intended to do. Come out
Yeah.
of college, get a good job, get a girlfriend, settle down, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
I don't want to do this. There's something missing here. This is not right, and we shift gears. I did not have any intention. My only intention when I came out of college was blasted. Literally, the day I put my luggage down from moving back home, my parents were like, "Oh, hell no, you're not doing that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so I'm either going to be a complete maverick and have to do this on my own without anybody's support, or I'm going to have to do what they're telling me to do, and let's see if there's some sort of compromise." I came out of college with a full intention of going to the academy in Athens. I was studying the classics. I wanted to become an archaeologist.
Hmm.
Right? Full intention. I was wild. It was the 70s. Go do your math. And my mother was like, "Hell no, you're not going to Athens." And I get it. I get it, because I was not mature. And just because I was going to go to Athens wasn't necessarily guaranteeing that I would mature.
Hmm.
I was very impressionable, and I was, oddly enough, I had this thing with boundaries, and literally anything that scared me, I did.
Hmm.
Right? Now, all I do is say no to everything. It's like, "Do you want no?"
Hmm.
No. I have a girlfriend who makes fun of me because she basically calls me no. So, so my mother said no, hell no, and Will Smith style, hell no, and
Yeah.
I didn't go, and I don't regret it. I do regret it. I'm not saying I don't. I mean, imagine, but I don't regret it, because I have this life, and I have no problems with this life. No problems with this life. I did do a few digs when I was younger, and every time I went on a dig, I came back with a different disease or a different ailment. And I thought to
Okay.
myself, so now I understand what she's saying. It's not all glorious. And before, this was before Indiana Jones. Like, there was it wasn't as if I had seen the movie and I wanted to be like that. But,
Yeah.
you know, I went abroad. I came back with a stomach ailment. I went down south. I came back covered in poison ivy, covered head to toe. So every time I went somewhere, I realized this is work. This is not play. This is not romantic. It sounds romantic, but it's not. So, as I said, I don't have regrets. In the beginning, I did. Oh, for a long time, I almost held it against them. Like, "Oh, you said no." I went back to school. I went back to NYU. I was studying. I thought I would get my master's and do it that way. But life just took me down a different path. And
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay. Um, I will say that if I had been more serious when I was going to school, I might have heard different things coming out of the lectures. And perhaps I would have been more serious. I don't know. If I came back from my undergraduate, if I had been a different person, my mother might have said, "Oh, sure," you know. But as I said, I know I probably would have been in jail.
Okay.
In Athens,
Yeah.
jail. I probably would have been.
But
Matter of fact,
so
I can pretty much guarantee it.
okay. So
And
you said
that would
that.
bring the end of that. Never seen again. There
Yeah.
goes, there goes joy.
So you were saying you don't regret it because you have this life. What has this life entailed?
All the same skills. So oddly enough, research, digging into things, finding out all the different sides that it could be, mystery, all the challenges, everything, all the same skills. And it ended up in email marketing, oddly enough. And it sounds like email marketing is research and skills and mystery. I'm learning about everybody else's business. So, let's say you tell me you want to do email marketing. Well, I don't know what you do. I don't know anything about you. You're not doing email marketing in my persona. I'm doing it in yours. So I'm stepping right out of myself, finding out everything about you. And you may say, well, I'd like to do this, but I don't know how to do that. And I might say, let's find out how to do it that way. You might say, I want to do recipes. Well, what kind of recipes? Well, I want to do a different recipe every single month. And matter of fact, we're going to do every month. It's going to be a different place and everything. Yeah. Suddenly you come up with this theme and we're learning. So every client is different. And I'm able to do all of that. And how did I fall into email marketing? It was one step at a time. It literally was, and they were all slightly connected. I started in finance. I worked for an international, at that point in time, it was a Japanese company, but they were international import and export. And the Japanese were, at that point in time, the import export companies. So I worked for a very large firm. Everybody was international, all over the world. It was my first job, held that for 5 years, went to a nonprofit, worked there for like 6 months, and I thought to myself, this is a weird place. Got another job. That job, I ended up being able to move to NBC because they were owned by RCA at the time. And I worked at one company and I applied to NBC and I got that job. I worked at NBC for 11 years. Media, yes, but the computer was being introduced at that point in time that I was working. And I was able to get on the ground base of networking, computer networking, computers, Apple computers, IBM computers, personal computers. And I ended up liking that, tremendously liking that. Again, all of these things, it's the same skill set over and over and over again. Did a lot of work with NBC with networking. The last job I had was the 1992 Olympics in Spain, in Barcelona. I was they called it local area network administrator. So I was one of the administrators for their computer network. I left NBC and I went to another company, publishing, because all of the skills that I learned through NBC were towards software, a lot of publishing software. So I went to a publishing company because I knew all the software, and I started publishing. Spent about 10 years in publishing, books, magazines, all that stuff. And at 2000, they asked me to do it's literally, my history in a nutshell. In 2000, they asked me to do risk management for the year 2000 bug, right? So I did a risk management there and got a lot into tech and the systems. I met up with a hosting company in the year 2000. It was just beginning to explode. Like, host, what do you do with a host? What is that? Is it a disease? Mm-hmm. And so I went to, out of the blue, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to call them up, make an appointment, find out what they do. And I sat down, I'm like, what do you do? What is this business like? Fascinated me. The internet became my next new shiny thing. I went back to school, got a degree in programming, and started with websites. I was still doing marketing, but I started playing with websites as I freelanced, moonlighting. Okay. Marketing, every time I got another marketing job, within a few months, I got, the company was bought by another company. And then within a year, I was laid off. So after a few layoffs or, transitions, I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this on the road. So with the website stuff, I contacted a few different people. I was doing websites. An agency connected with me and said, can you do our email marketing? It's the same code. And that was the day I fell in love with email marketing. And the reason I did was because it's like a magazine, and that's why I loved publishing so much. It's like it has a beginning and an end. You never say, somebody got sick this month, so there's no magazine this month. Sorry, subscribers, no magazine this month. I don't feel well. You have to get it done. And the same thing with email marketing. You begin, you end, you get it out. You begin, you end, you get it out. And it's over and over and over again. It's very routine. It's very process oriented. And everybody I work with is different. Everybody's different. Somebody will say, well, what is so-and-so doing? It doesn't matter what so-and-so is doing. You're not so-and-so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. You get that variety then. And then when did you build your podcast into your lifestyle?
Podcast was like, you ever get this nagging thing where I got to do something and you're like, why did I even think of that? Like, where did that come from? It just, 2019, like a little voice said to me, you got to do this. And I'm like, what is this? Well, you've got to get out and do something with people. Well, what am I? Literally, it was a nagging thing, like an itch where you're like, what is this? What saying? Literally had to keep on asking questions. Well, what is it? Well, what does it sound like? What does it look like? What? And at some point in time, it's like, oh, it's a podcast. And yeah, it's a podcast. And I was like, okay, well, I have to get it ready. I have to have a name. I have to have technology. No, just do it. Just get a Zoom account and just do it. Well, what about music? Literally. And then it just kept saying, just do it. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I literally went to friends and I said, let's just do this. I'm comfortable with you. So there's no pain, no pain, no gain, but I'm comfortable with you. So I did it with friends. That's when the networking came in. It's like, I can't just keep doing this with friends and these stupid nagging voices saying, do it. So I just kept doing it and I had to meet people. And I thought to myself, so this is what this is all about. And it's not stopping. It's still talking to me. It's sort of, I don't know if everybody goes through this. It's sort of like this legacy thing where, okay, it's time to pay back. You don't need to make money off of this. This is not a money-making adventure. This is sort of, let's take those boundaries. Let's take them down one brick at a time. And while you're doing it, give it to someone else, not the brick, but give the stage to somebody else. So it's twofold. I'm getting something out of it, and the other person's getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where the podcast was born, and it still lives. It's not meant. I don't think it's grandiose by any means. Grandiose for me, but I'm not thinking, I'm going to have the #1 podcast. That's what I want. I'll be happy if I just keep doing this until I can't speak anymore. And then I'll learn sign language.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. There's an authenticity to that. And I feel the same thing with my project. The biggest fan of my project is me, which is to me the most important thing, because when not a lot of people knew about it, I was excited about it. When people knew about it, I was excited about it. If people stop paying attention to it, I'll be excited about it. So I feel that same kind of internal motivation as well.
It may also grow into something that you never expected.
Yeah, exactly. Which is exciting as well.
Exactly. And every conversation has that possibility of growing to something you never expected. I literally have connected with people where I've known them for a really long time, of them, whatever. Maybe talked to them once or twice. Never had a one-on-one. And after I talk with them, I'm thinking, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? I've known them for so long. Why didn't I do this? And, I think that I do look at a lot of things. Another buzzword, opportunity. It's not a money-making opportunity. It's just a wild opportunity. You don't know what's going to come of it. Even if it's only a smile on your face.
Yeah.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. You don't know. Here I meet you. In 2.5 years, you might come back to me and say, you know what, I need an email marketer. And I know that you do that. And I remember, I'm just saying it might happen. I'm not saying it's going to. And I'm not saying I'm meeting people so that it can. I'm saying it might. You don't know.
Yeah, it's just part of the potential that lies within. So, I totally understand that. I see the same things.
Yeah, and if you've got to open yourself up to that. And again, it's not about, everybody I meet has a price tag, although everybody does. It's just not monetary. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a price tag.
Yeah. Money's only one form of value.
Money is definitely, and that's sort of what pushes me, and sometimes I do think, this voice, not this voice, says to me, "Oh, let's monetize it," and I'm like, "Shut up." I know where that's coming from, but shut up. A lot of people have said, "Oh, you should get a sponsor," and you probably could do a lot with your podcast. And I'm like, first of all, no. Second of all, no. I don't want a sponsor, because then it can't be. It's not me anymore. This is me 100%.
Yeah.
So I stick my foot in it. That's okay. It's me. I'm going to air it, and people will see it and say, "Isn't she XYZ?" And then possibly a few days later, when they make the same mistake, they're going to giggle and say, "Well, Joy did it on the air. I guess I'm not so bad."
Yeah. It's great creating that relatability for people.
Yeah. We are, we're all vulnerable, and we all make mistakes, and all of us. And part of my, my brand is, you know what? I'm going to show the dark side. It's okay. Mm-hmm. If I have to blow my nose in the middle of this, guess what? We all have to blow our nose. It's okay.
Yeah. Human. Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I just think that it's not anything special. Another thing, that comes to my mind is that I always wanted to be like Jerry Seinfeld. And the only reason I wanted to be like him is because he came from Long Island, he had a Jewish background. He grew up around, we're about the same age. I connected with everything he said and did. And I always thought to myself, I can't go on stage and be a comic like him, because I don't have, he's brilliant. That's not the way I'm wired. But something literally, that little voice said, be like Jerry. I'm like, I'm not Jerry. I can't be like Jerry. I don't want to be like, he's Jerry. I'm not Jerry. But there's something about the fact that his show was literally awful. Awful about awful people. That's what I'm not awful like the show. It's awful, but it was about awful, horrible people. They were, they showed every single time they were selfish, they were mean, they were greedy, and everyone laughed. Well, mostly everyone laughed. A lot of people said I never got into it because, but I'm just saying. And that's, that was in the back of my mind saying, if you do the show and if you are not the perfect person, that's exactly the show. Like his show is the show about nothing. My show is the show about imperfect people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think people appreciate the authenticity, and it's much easier to connect with something that's authentic than something that's fabricated.
Right. It started off as being about email marketing. Right? And then I thought to myself, well, how many times can you discuss like email marketing?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we get it. Everybody's got to do it. Okay. And I thought, well, you know what? And then I started playing around with my brand name, which is Email and Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, email's like coffee. It's like not brain science or surgery, but there's a little science about finding the right coffee, grinding it, how much
Mm-hmm.
sugar, it's like everybody likes it a little different. They're like, oh, I don't like that flavor. I like this flavor. I don't like that flavor. I hate Starbucks. I'm Dunkin' Donuts. So everybody's got, it's a little different. And I'm like, it's like email marketing. And that just happened. Did I intend that to happen? No. Was I even thinking that when, no.
Yeah.
And so I just allow things like wild synchronicities to happen. Just let them happen.
Yeah.
You might not even recognize them until somebody calls your attention. This and this and this, they're connected. They are? You're right.
Yeah. And having that faith is super important too, and the trust in the process, because things will fall into place. And I feel like, I've seen the same thing through my project. It's just like you do it. Like I meet people, you have your episodes, and it will become whatever it's supposed to become.
Right? You just got to listen and your eyes are open.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I do say no a lot, I mean, I do. My mother would always say, if I tell you to clean up your room, you're going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow morning, your room's going to be clean. And that's sort of how I work. If you tell me something, I'm less liable to do it right then and there. And I'll probably get a little peeved that you're telling me what to do. Like, ooh, don't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll be like, yeah, but the room is dirty. Yeah, but don't tell me what to do. Yeah, but I can't even find my bed. Yeah, but don't tell. Oh, just clean up your room. And I clean my room up. So,
Yeah.
With a lot of people, even if you're not open to everything that you see or do or meet or hear or whatever, even if it sounds really alien or weird or what, I'm not telling people to jump off of cliffs or things like that. But if you think about it, you may find there's some affinity, something resonates. And maybe it's not, as I said, jumping off of cliffs, but maybe it's climbing cliffs instead.
Yeah.
Maybe it's mountain climbing, or maybe it's, painting pictures of cliffs.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
You don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, well, thank you for having me as a guest on the show.
You bet.
I think it's really interesting to hear, like, archaeology to email marketing for most people probably doesn't make sense, but when you explain the story, it does. And I think that's really cool for people to hear. So
yeah,
thank you.
It is kind of weird, right? Thanks so much for being here. If people want to find you on the net, is there any particular place you want to, you want them to go, or how would they find you to have a conversation?
They can find me on Instagram. My handle is Rob's 10K Friends. So ROBS 10K Friends. And that's where I post the stories of everyone that I meet. So if they want to see, well, they'd be able to listen to our full conversation, but I'll share your story there as well as everyone else that I've met. And I have a website, robs10kfriends.com, that has like a little bit of information on my speaking kind of career. So those are the two main places. Instagram is like my hub. That's where the project lives. So
Cool.
That's the place to go.
All right. Very good. So it was a pleasure, really a pleasure meeting you. Good luck in your project.
Yeah, thank you. And you as well with the podcast and everything it turns into.
Thank you. Take care.
Yep. See you.
Bye.